my nan used to say, my great nan actually, she said, count the pennies and the pounds will make themselves.
So welcome back to Pocket Perspectives, everyone. This is our first episode, just us, of this season. We've had some guests, so obviously I'm here, Jack, and we've got Tinisha with us, as always.
Hello.
Hello. So even though we haven't got any guests in today, it's still going to be really exciting. We're going to have some stunning chats, and it's going to be great. So today we're going to talk about different types of savings methods. So I think some people find savings a little bit boring sometimes and a little bit draining, and you don't feel like you've always got an end goal, and when you do have an end goal you feel like you're never achieving it, and there's so many different reasons why people don't enjoy saving, which we will talk about, but there's so many ways that you can make that saving more fun and change it up, and that's what we're going to be discussing today, aren't we, T?
Yeah, no, I'm really excited. One, I'm really excited to have just me and you. Like, obviously, as you can probably tell, each guest, like, I love them. I'm like, you know what, biggest fan. Like, I'm here for this conversation. And I think that we've obviously just had 2 guest episodes in a row. So it's nice to just kind of have me and you and just kind of have a little chat. It's just a little bit more informal, I think. It's just kind of like, it just feels like we're on FaceTime.
It does, yeah. It does.
Yeah.
It's just going to be a little bit more informal, and we're going to just be chatting about all these different ways of saving that we've done and what we've looked into. So it's going to be great. And obviously we know that not everyone can save. Like, we're just talking about these things sort of not regarding anyone's financial situation, which is obviously a big thing. But at the end of this, just sort of assess your own ability to save, how much you can save. And if you can try some of these new things, then that's amazing.
Yeah, because everything's like each to your own. And, you know, I think we said, like, you know, people might not like saving. It's like, oh wait, how can someone not like saving money? Because it just means that you've got like this big pot of money, and it's like, it's not about that. It's just like, obviously millions of people are living paycheck to paycheck, like just barely being able to afford the necessities. So that's not really what we're talking about today. Obviously it's such a big factor, and it's a big factor to influence if you do save or you don't save, but we kind of just want to provide some options if you are thinking, you know, I want to save, just don't know where to start. That's where we're gonna venture into today.
Yeah, exactly. And there are so many ways you can do it, aren't there? Like, we probably won't even cover all the different ways today.
No, these are more like, I guess, fun ways. So you will have your like classic savings, which we do, what we might do an entirely episode on it about like bank savings and interest rates and all that. That's not what this episode's going to be about. It's a more like alternative, because obviously, I mean, I'm assuming a lot of people already know what saving in a bank kind of entails. If you don't, we'll do an episode on it. But this is just kind of, if you've tried the bank route or you've tried the traditional methods, here's some bit untraditional methods from us.
Yeah, and we're gonna, as we always do, we're gonna talk about our personal sort of experiences with saving as well. Which is a long story.
It is, and I will, I guess, kick it off. So my personal journey of savings, not the greatest, and for anyone who hasn't listened before, we'll just give a bit of context. Me and Jack are both, I'm nearly 25, Jack, I'm nearly at you, but you've turned 26 before me, don't you?
Yeah, it's in like 2 weeks. 2 weeks today when we record it.
Exciting, yay. So yeah, Jack's 25 going 26, I'm 24 going 25. So we're still babies, and I'll probably be saying this until we're 40, Jack. Like, I'll just be like, I'm just fresh out of uni, like, give me a chance. But I do feel that I'm like chill, like I'm only young. So I haven't ventured too much in. I think I've always been kind of bad at it, and I've always been a bit of a splurger. I'm still yet to find the perfect method for me, and I don't think there is a perfect method for anyone, but obviously there's so many different options. I currently, right now, I use Roundup, which isn't like a crazy big saving thing where you're gonna get like millions and millions of pounds, but if you don't know what it is, basically on your bank, any transaction you do, if you like sign up for like their Roundup scheme, which I think a lot of banks do, or I'm with Starling and Monzo, and both of mine do it.
Yeah, both of them do it.
Yeah, if you spend something, say it's like £5.67, it'll round up to £6, then that like couple of pence will go into a pot, and then I mean, if you're like me, you don't really think about that, do you? And it's just like, oh, it's just gone, like I've just spent it, blah blah blah, like beep. But it adds up. Like if you just don't think about it and don't look at that pot, then you're doing it for years and years. You know, it could be quite lucrative.
It does add up, and I feel like for me, I just, when I'm buying things, I kind of round it up in my head anyway. Like if I'm buying something for £2.69 or whatever, I'll say, all right, I spent £3. Like I won't really think about that 31p or whatever it is.
No.
And that you said it was Monzo and Starling, but I've got a lifetime ISA with Money Box, and I think they actually offer a roundup thing. So with the bank account that you've got it connected to, they can actually, like, whatever you buy, they can take the rounded up amount and put it into your ISA savings, and obviously you're getting your bonus on that as well. So that's quite good as well.
Yeah, that's really handy. I think it's really good. And we'll touch on it later about like saving for certain things, but it's good that you can put that towards obviously your house deposit. So then you're like, oh, like I'm working towards something. I think what did we do? We kind of change it up. So we have obviously me and my partner Carl, we have a joint account, and when we planned our holiday, so we've just come back from Amsterdam, but when we were like putting in like our money for the pots for our spends and things like that, we switched our roundup on our joint account to go into that pot. So normally we just put it into like a random pot and just don't think about it. We were like, you know what, like we're going to Amsterdam in however many months, let's switch this pot to go into this and see like how much the roundups are going to like accumulate. And it did add like quite a bit on, which we didn't obviously have to put in then ourselves, so it was quite nice.
Like if you spend like a penny or like something in a penny, you're getting 99p in your savings, aren't you? So they do start to add up. I think I turned mine off because most of the things I was buying must have been like something in a penny, and I ended up checking my bank account and I had like minus £16. I was like, no, I can't be doing these roundups anymore. It's taking all my money off me.
Where's it all gone? No, I don't blame you. They can be good, but obviously only if you're kind of in the position to do that. But I kind of think of it. Yeah, definitely. I think of it like, you know, like finding money down the back of the sofa. It's kind of that, isn't it? It's like the little shrapnel that you get. So it is quite nice. But yeah, so I do have pots. Like I said, in my bank so that we had the Amsterdam pot, but I'll have loads. Like I have a pet one for like all my, just in case anything happens. Obviously we have pet insurance, but like vet bills are crazy if you have to like put up the money up front. So we have different pots for different things, like personal, joint, and we'll again touch on it later, but I think having a reason for saving is where like is best for me. Like if I'm just like, right, I'm going to save 20% of my income, it's just going to go in a pot, I'm just not going to do that unless I know why that's there, you know.
Yeah, I think the same for me. Like I struggle to save just for the sake of saving. Like for things like an emergency fund, like the fact that I don't know what that emergency fund is going to be for, I don't feel like I want to save for it.
No.
So if I've got something particular like a MacBook or a dog, speaking of dogs, I'll be getting a dog soon, hopefully, saving for a dog, then I'm like, right, okay, I'll put this much in every week, every month, whatever. So I'm a lot more motivated that way. So I agree with you there.
Yeah, do you know what I think it is? It's probably like the outcome of it, and it's like seeing that, and you're like kind of working towards that something, you know, that once you've reached that point, you've got that tangible thing to be like, oh my God, I spent all this money on. But I think emergency funds or just saving for the sake of saving, it's like, well, great, but then what's the end goal? Like, what am I working towards? So even if you don't have like a particular like hard reason to save, even just like telling yourself like, oh, like when I get to however much, whatever your end goal, I'll do this or I'll do that, and it's just kind of having something in your eyes like to work towards, you know, in your mind.
Yeah, and with the with the emergency funds, it's like you're saving for something that's going to happen that's bad almost.
Yeah.
So it's got almost a negative connotation to it before you've even started saving for it. So it's, in some ways, that would motivate you to be like, right, I need to make sure I've got this money so that the bad things that happen I can cover. But I just don't really want to be paying for a new boiler with my emergency fund. I want to use that emergency fund in the Trafford Centre.
Yeah, my emergency is a shopping spree, please. Thank you very much.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, no, I know what you mean. So having that like that separation of not just everything going into one pot, I think can be quite good if you do struggle with that motivation. And I'll I'll probably refer to a previous episode quite a lot in this episode because I think it's quite relevant to the episode we filmed with Laura. If you don't know, so we're on season 2 now, season 2 episode 1, so it's like 2 episodes back from this one if you scroll down. It was all about how our mind and our emotions influence like just kind of money in general, but a lot of that was to do with like savings. So a lot of what we'll say will probably tie back into that, so I definitely recommend giving that one a watch if you're interested in this topic, and she'll kind of go more in depth, obviously, as an expert in that field. So yeah, I'd recommend that.
Yeah, it was really interesting as well, wasn't it? And even in this episode, we're going to talk a little bit about sort of like the psychology and the emotions behind spending. So if you find that part of this podcast interesting, you'll definitely love that.
Yeah, no, I agree. And speaking of which, should we get on to psychology with tea?
Yes, let's have
That'd
it.
be its own little segment. Love it.
Yeah.
So again, if you are a new listener, I bang on every single episode about how I did psychology at uni. It's something I'll never let go of. And I will try and bring
it to proud of it.
Yeah, I should just like put my degree up here, shouldn't I? I'll get rid of, I don't know what these flowers are. I should get rid of this ice cream with like flowers in and just put my degree on there to be like, I studied psychology. But I do love kind of bringing it into kind of conversation, especially topics like this, because it's so important. So Jack, I'm just gonna fire away. I'm just gonna tell you some things and chime in. Let's have a chat about it.
Yeah.
So let's go.
If I can.
No, you will. Don't worry. Far from it. Don't worry. So there's 2 aspects of psychology in terms of when we want to talk about how we develop or how we behave and kind of what influences us the most. Obviously, there's so many things, but there's kind of 2 big subsections that a lot of psychologists will often refer to. So we have nature and nurture. So your nurture is basically everything in your environment. So, you know, your upbringing, your parents, your friends, your family, your community, the socio-economics, like your kind of financial situation, like your community where you live, like anything like that, anything that's in your environment that's nothing to do with kind of inside you and your biology, is all nurture. Your nature then is your like genetics, so things that like you're like kind of disposition to, and yeah, anything that you kind of can't control really. So I'm gonna talk about a few things. Again, there's so many more things that we could speak about, but I'm not gonna give us a lecture because we're not here. We didn't sign up for Psychology 101. So I'll touch on a few things, but there's so many more. If you can think of some, if you're listening, feel free to DM us and let us know and be like, girl, you missed this out, put it in.
And I feel like the people that actually are listening to the psychology bits and are like, oh my God, this is so interesting. We should probably do like a full episode on psychology and money, like a full season on psychology and money, because there's so much.
Could do a full on like literal like podcast dedicated to it. Like honestly, it's so interesting, and it might just be me that finds it really interesting, but I don't think it is. I think it's so fun to do because we're like, oh, I get that, like, and you link it. It's like therapy, but like not trained at all.
It's like the realization, isn't it, when you hear it, like, oh wow, I see that.
Yeah, and you can never look back. So I'll touch on a few things now. So we'll focus a bit on nature, which I think is quite a big impact. Nature, I don't think has a dramatic impact compared to nurture, but I mean, that's just my opinion. Feel free to argue with me in my DMs, but I think a really, really big one and something I'm very passionate about is upbringing. So I think, and again, we touched on it a few episodes ago with Laura, but how you grew up, where you grew up, who your parents are, who your family are, anything that you experience from a young age is going to, like, this is just a hard fact coming in, no opinion here, this is just straight up, will impact you. Like, there's no doubt about it. There's so many studies, like, it's inevitable, be that a good thing or a bad thing, depending on your situation. And money is no exception. I think if you grew up in a household, and it's just an example, but where like savings emphasized, and you know you've been taught a lot of like financial education and taught how to be smart with your money from a young age, and you also obviously see, I mean, this is kind of stereotypical, but parents, and you've seen them and how they handle their money, you obviously see them as peers and you can be influenced by them and say, oh, they're acting this way and they're doing this, like maybe I should replicate it. And also vice versa, if you didn't grow up in maybe the best environment in terms of like parents really struggled to save and you didn't really get that education at as a young child to say, you should save to to do that, to do this, that can probably stay with you until you're much older, and then it's something that you might have to work on yourself to kind of get out of. And again, most of these are going to be spectrums. There's obviously good and bad things about probably both areas, and you can have too much or too little of one thing, which never makes it good. But upbringing is so important, I think.
Yeah, and for me personally, my dad, when I grew up, I always remember seeing my dad, if he was ever having a bad mental health day or was depressed in any way, he would go out and spend money on his credit card.
Yeah.
And he would max out his credit card and buy, whether it's even a new car, for example, or not little things, like big things.
Yeah.
So for me growing up, I thought, okay, so I'll go out and buy something that'll make me feel better, because I was replicating what he was doing. And it's even still now I do it. I'm not on the same scale. I don't get myself a new Tesla when I'm feeling a bit down, but I still would like to go shopping and buy something little to cheer me up.
Yeah.
And that's obviously not the best thing to do, but like you said, you got to try and work your own way out of it, haven't you? If you acknowledge that it's not right.
Yeah, so obviously you've been influenced kind of indirectly by your dad, because your dad's not saying to you as a young kid, like, oh, you need to copy me, you need to do this, you need to do that. But as a young kid growing up, like, they're your role models, aren't they?
Yeah, exactly.
So I don't blame you. I think for me, my mum was very much kind of like, life's too short. She was like, do you know what? If you want to do this, do it. Even if, it's your last 20 quid and you want to go and do this, just go and have fun. And obviously, again, it's a good and bad thing. And there's no perfect way to be like, you need to do this, you need to do that. But I think I've learned that. So I think I've still got that mentality. I'm like, I want that. And I've only got this much in my bank. I'm going to do it because life's too short.
Yeah, I think I'm a bit like that as well, actually.
Yeah.
Like deep down, I know I should be saving this emergency fund, but I don't want to. I want to do this thing that I've been wanting to do for a few weeks, because I might not be able to do it next week. So you just got to do it when you make the most of it, haven't you? But yeah, like you said, it's a spectrum. So
yeah, I think I saw people in uni, and obviously when you're with people all the time, you kind of you see like how they manage their money, and some people will be like really good and be like, you know what, I've budgeted X amount for this month and I can't go on this night out because I've done my budget. Even if you've got the money there for next month, because obviously with students you kind of get paid in quarters, things like that. A lot of people were like, I'm done, like that's me, I can't spend any more this month until next month because I'd go over budget. Me, I'd be like, oh, I'll just dip into next month, I'll just take 20 quid out of that and I'll come on the night out. Like that wouldn't even be an argument in my head. And I'm like, I really attribute that to how people were raised, I think. So it's quite interesting.
Definitely, I was exactly the same. Like we were going on that night. If for people that are listening and watching, me and T were like such a duo on nights out, weren't we? It was so good.
Dangerous duo. Like it got to the point where people would refuse to come out if it was just me and Jack and no one else was like a buffer. They couldn't handle me and Jack, which is so funny to think back. I know. I wish we could probably share some clips and videos, but I just don't think they'd be allowed on the internet, to be honest.
Would get cancelled.
Yeah, well, so I'll see if I can find some ones that won't get us cancelled, and maybe we'll share them. But yeah, we were like that. But we would go. We wouldn't care about next month's budget. That's future me's problem. Yeah, so that's quite funny. And again, kind of relating, but socioeconomic status. So for the argument's sake, because that is such a long word to say, and it'll give me like a tongue tie. I'll just call it SES. But basically, if you don't know what it means, it's kind of yours and or your family's position in society, normally based on kind of like your income levels, your education, so where you go to school, and like occupation. So if your parents all had really like high paying jobs and you went to like a really nice school, maybe it was like a grammar school or a private school, and you lived, in maybe a nice house and you didn't really worry about money, people would regard you as having a high SES or a high socioeconomic status, compared to, for example, if you or your families are on benefits, or you're on low income and potentially you might not go to a great school, and things like that. Maybe it's like just part-time work, whatever. That would then be classed as kind of like a low socioeconomic status, and that's just kind of like assumptions and very broad. That's not like the perfect definition, but that's just kind of give examples, people know what we're talking about. So obviously if someone's got a higher SES, chances are they've got a higher income, which then often can be, attributed to kind of more likely to save. And it's not saying just because someone earns more, they're going to have more disposable income, because often with higher income comes higher expenses. So it's not like a one rule fits all, but that's just kind of like a rough guide of if you aren't in the position to save, again, like we touched on earlier, that's probably why you haven't started, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
So obviously with that, something that not a lot of us consider, and it's something that I really do want to have a podcast episode on, so watch out for the near future for this, but financial inclusion, something that is really like close to my heart, and it's not something that I ever considered before working at IE Hub. But if you don't know what it is, it's basically inclusion. Kind of get what that means, just being included in things. So having access to certain resources and certain opportunities is much greater and much more accessible for people with a high SES, higher income, more affluent areas, and people who have lower SES, lower income, often do face barriers to getting things like certain bank accounts. And I mean, bank accounts are standard, like it's kind of like access to all, as long as you've got like proof of address, proof of ID, whatever. I don't know what they need, but as long as they can prove who you are, you can get a standard checking account. But a lot of people, I think, are worried about kind of their credit history, or they can't get certain bank accounts that have good saving interest rates because of their credit, because of certain things that happen to them because of their SES. And you know how it's just kind of like all links to one another, and you could probably keep going forever and be like, this is because of this happened because of this happened because of this. But I think approximately there's like 1.2 million people in the UK do not have access to certain bank accounts because of things like income, age. Obviously age, I mean, if you're like lower in age, you're not going to get a bank account for certain restrictions, but even like socioeconomic status can affect it, and it's like this bias that is there, but where I feel like I've got privilege because I've never had to consider that. So it's really, really eye-opening.
I wouldn't have ever, I just assumed that everyone had a bank account because it's so, for me it was so easy to set one up. It was just a matter of going into a bank, I want a bank account. In fact, I think I've had a bank account since I was 16.
Really?
So it was like, I remember getting like I don't know if you had one, but when I was 16, you could get like a young person's Halifax bank account. So I had like, there's similar things nowadays, but this was pretty much a normal bank account like you would get as an adult now. But I couldn't withdraw money from my card. My parents had to withdraw it from their like version of my card. And then when I turned 18, it just automatically changed to like a normal current account sort of thing.
Yeah, I had that, but mine started even earlier. I was 11 when I first got
really?
mine. But yeah, so it's kind of similar, but, and this makes me feel old, but it was like you get a checkbook, which obviously I never used. Who the bloody hell am I writing a check out to? But it had like this book, and like we'd go to the bank. We'd have to go obviously in person because online banking wasn't a thing then. And then my mum would be like, right, I'm putting a £5 in. It'd be like a savings book essentially. And then the person that like the banker would like put in like £5 paid here, and then that'd just go into my bank. And so I'd have this literal physical paper booklet full of all the transactions. And then I don't know what then it turned into a current account because I never ever set one up. It just kind of automatically switched over, like you said. But yeah, and then it's just weird to think back. I don't even know, I was 11, so I can't even barely remember, but it was kind of like a savings thing for kids, I assume, but I had kind of access to it as long as my mum was there. It was a whole thing. But there is that because we got it so easily, like you said, we don't have to think about things like that. So I'm definitely going to touch on it and just kind of open people's eyes to the situations that some people are in that we don't even have to think about.
Yeah, it'll be a good episode, that one, when we go into that, because there's so much I imagine that people don't know about, like the fact that I didn't even know that many adults, 1.2 million adults, didn't have a bank account. To hear that is just wild.
Yeah, it's definitely a generational thing. I think there's a lot of adults that definitely do have access to it, but either feel like they don't, or know they do but don't want it, and are kind of hesitant and are just happy sticking with whatever way they manage it. But I understand not like wanting to do that if you've done this for so long, and banks were still relatively new in terms of like having like bank cards and online banking. So I understand not wanting to transition if you've never done it before, you know.
Yeah, everyone's got personal preferences, haven't they?
They have. And then the last topic in terms of nurture was kind of culture. So obviously we're sat here from, I mean, I'm in Liverpool, Jack's in Scarborough, we're both in the UK, very westernised, and that's kind of what we're used to. So it's all well and good us saying, you know, we think this and this is this, but you obviously have to consider that there's so many different cultures out there as well, even within the UK. So obviously there's different, like in terms of different countries, but we're so multicultural in the UK, and it's really important to highlight that there's different perspectives out there. So in terms of non-Western savings, there's many Asian cultures. I don't want to like get this wrong because this is a bit of research that I did, so please shout at me if I'm getting any of this incorrect. But it's called Hui or Shit fund. I really don't want to pronounce that word wrong. So please don't come for me.
You will have to put it into like a pronunciation website.
I know. I was really worried that
like.
it was going to be a naughty word. So I was researching. I was like, oh my god, how am I going to say this? So yeah, but I will put it up on the screen for all the visual listeners. So it's like an informal savings club, and it's really, really interesting. When I was doing research, I was like, oh my god, that's so cool. Basically, groups of people, so it's typically like friends, family, people of your community, they'll like pool together a large quantity of money, and this will kind of be agreed upon like ahead of time, and it'll be the same amount. And each member contributes a fixed amount of money on a rotating basis. And then each cycle, one member of this community will then receive this entire amount. So say if there's like 30 people in this group, obviously you have to get around 30 people. So that's like maybe like 30 months, say if you do it monthly, until potentially it could be your turn. But imagine how much money that would be of like 30 people's, well, like that's crazy. But if you think about it,
that's a really good idea, isn't it? Actually,
it's just saving, yeah, because you're not losing. It's not like you're giving that money, because you're eventually going to get it back in like whatever you put in, you get them back eventually. But you just do it and you don't think about it, and it's just gone. And then it's like, oh my god, it's Christmas. Yeah, come at once, your birthday.
That's really good, actually. I'd do that.
Yeah. Should we just do it, just me and you?
Yeah.
We'll each send each other a tenner, and the next month we'll get 20 quid back.
20 quid each, yeah.
Yeah,
not pay for Netflix.
So yeah, basically it continues until every member's received their turn, and obviously allows for savings for expenses or emergencies, which is great because you're like, you know what, that's gone, and then as soon as I get that back, maybe I'll buy this new car, or maybe I'll do this, I'll do that. So you can like attribute like things for you. Maybe you won't know like whenever you're getting it, because I assume it's kind of at random. But I love it. I just love that.
It's kind of like a lottery, isn't it? Like you're paying for your ticket. Like you're paying, your contribution is like your ticket almost.
But it's guaranteed lottery, because you know you're getting it back.
Yeah. That's stunning. I'd love that.
It is. It's delish. So yeah, and then obviously some cultures will prioritize saving and being thrifty, but then some will kind of emphasize about like immediate consumptions and even like displaying wealth. Like some cultures really think it's important to say, you know, if I've got this money, I'm putting these jewels on my head, I've got a crown, girl, and I'm just like gonna slay. And I think it's really interesting. Like it's kind of a side note, but do you know when you see them celebrities or like really rich people, and they're just in like t-shirt and jeans, like Adam Sandler is a key example. Steve Jobs used to do it, like he'd just be in like a t-shirt and jeans. Mark Zuckerberg, like all the tech guys, they just want jeans on top. They're not out here in like Gucci suits, are they? Do you know what I mean? But I just think that's really interesting, of like some of the richest people in the world, and they're not displaying it in any way.
Yeah, like it's Elon Musk is walking around in his jeans and his black blazer that I always see him in.
Yeah, but I think that'd be like, I think if I was mega rich, I would just not. I wouldn't be walking around in like Gucci like dress and everything. Like, have you seen? Oh, who do we love? What's the TikTok name? Roots darling. What's she called? Chelsea
Chelsea
Lear.
Arts.
Do you know how
She's so
she's
funny.
suddenly got money and she's in Gucci? She's got these hair
Yeah.
extensions that are out here, and I'm like, treat yourself if you got the cash, girl. But like you're a
Mm,
walking like pinpoint like target almost. Like it terrifies me a
yeah.
little bit. You know, so it could be me.
I suppose I didn't even think about that. I would probably be the type of person to buy expensive things if I was really rich, just
Mm,
because I've got that spending tendency on me. But I didn't think about the risk of me getting mugged in the street wearing my Louis Vuitton
yeah.
jacket and my Burberry trousers and whatever else I could get.
Well, I guess where you go, and also some of them aren't as like obvious, you know, like some like
Yeah,
like Gucci jeans or whatever that are probably just normal jeans, just a little bit more expensive. So, but yeah, Kim Kardashian stopped doing it. Obviously, she got robbed in Paris, didn't she? And then she just kind of stopped
yeah,
wearing jewelry. So the whole family now just wear fake jewelry out and about, which I don't blame them.
yeah,
So yeah, I'd be exactly the same. And obviously religion, but neither me or Jack are particularly religious, so we don't want to comment on anything like that. But obviously, it's just an example of there's so many different factors and communities that'll influence how you handle your money and save in general.
yeah. Even just things like peer pressure as well.
Yeah.
Like if you're being told by everyone around you that you should be saving, you might go into that without the knowledge that you need, doing it all wrong, saving in the wrong places.
Mm.
So peer pressure is a massive thing in everything that you do, but especially with saving.
Yeah, even in the other way of like, and it can be unintentional because I think sometimes people hear peer pressure and like, oh, like people like telling you must do this, you must do
Yeah,
that. But for example, at uni, it would go back to that example of go on a night out. Me and Jack would always get FOMO. So if our friends are going out, we want to go, and that's almost peer pressure because
yeah,
it's like, oh, they're going out, I need to go. They're not being smart with their money and they're like spending it all on Trebs in Newcastle.
yeah,
We're gonna go and do the same. So it can, yeah, everything around you does influence you. But then also, I did briefly just want to touch on genetics. So obviously, our environment influences so much, but I think often people forget that, you know, our biology, how we were made, you're born with all these genetics inside of you that will some maybe come out, maybe be expressed, maybe won't be expressed. And personality traits are actually really like there's a really big like genetic influence on them. So
mm,
many studies out there, and again, not going to bore you with them, but things like impulsivity, self-control, like how you analyze risk, all of those are obviously so important to how you save and how you manage your money, but they also all have some kind of genetic component, and oftentimes they'll work together with your environment. So obviously if you've got a certain genetic trait for impulsivity, for example, but then you grew up in a family where no one was impulsive, there is a chance that
mm,
that'll kind of counteract and it won't be expressed. You won't have that. But like basically, this is just saying that you have a predisposition for that to be heightened
yeah,
when not factoring in your environment. So it's quite interesting.
yeah. And like you said, that the environment can still impact that as well. Like if your parents have got a genetic trait to be more likely to impulse spend, like my dad,
Hmm.
and then I've got that trait there. What again? Watching them do it and seeing them do it is going to enhance it
Yeah,
and make it more likely to come out in me.
yeah,
So it's all intertwined. Is that the word? It's all sort of
yeah.
linked.
No, it definitely is. I think I should have got it up for this episode actually, but I did a genetic test just for like kind of ancestry, but then you can connect it to this like